Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and following on from what most people seem to consider a disappointing January transfer window, it was all eyes and ears towards Brendan Rodgers' press conference this afternoon to wait and see what he said in regards to Celtic having a lacklustre end to that transfer window last night. No backup striker, however, Jeffrey Schlupp arriving at the club. We have a lot to talk about. Are Celtic well equipped for the remainder of this league season? Well, that's up for debate, but we've got a few things to cover. Let's talk about that. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. It would be much appreciated. Very quickly, let me just say thank you to everyone who stuck with the channel through the January transfer window. Even at its bleakest and its highest points, it was one of the wildest Januaries I think we'll ever have on this channel, and you guys stood by me the whole way through, so I really do appreciate that. Let's keep it going from now until the end of the season. We're well on track for hitting 50,000 subscribers before the last ball is kicked. I believe in this. Let's do that. So the transfer window came to an end last night. Of course, we were live on this channel covering the deadline. Celtic only making one signing on deadline day, and that was Jeffrey Schlupp joining from Crystal Palace. That was announced right on the deadline last night, as Celtic said that he would join the club until the end of the season on loan. The club's statement didn't include any information about a potential option or obligation to sign Jeffrey Schlupp at the end of the season, and you can only really assume that's because Kieran Tierney will be here next year anyway. So Jeffrey Schlupp, no matter how well he plays between now and May, I don't think there's much of a plan to bring him in permanently. Who knows, that narrative might take a wild change of direction depending how these next few months go for him. But with Kieran Tierney coming to the club, with Greg Taylor potentially staying on if he signs a new contract, there won't really be a place for Jeffrey Schlupp. But I said it last night on the stream, I'll reiterate the point now. Very happy with the signing of Schlupp himself. I think he'll be a good option and good cover in that left back area. A player who's played, I think, over 300 times for a Premier League club in Crystal Palace is obviously going to be of decent quality for us. So on paper, things look decent for him. It's just a shame we didn't really get the job done in other areas, did we? So yeah, Jeffrey Schlupp, the only signing last night. We didn't sign a replacement for Kyogo, which has left Celtic fans in battle amongst themselves once more. It's not like us to have a tit for tat online, is it? We've got half of the Celtic supporters, I would say less than half in fact, less than half saying that we're fine, that people are being overreactionary. Then you've got the other split of the fans saying that heads should roll at Celtic Park and people should resign. There is really no happy medium here after the January transfer window. You're on one side or the other, and I can see why. I feel like a right fence sitter right now. I don't totally commit myself to either side of that fence right now, but it's easy to be disappointed, and I think you should be disappointed. Celtic didn't do what was required of this transfer window, and that obviously impacts the squad for a big game against Bayern Munich, a big tie against Bayern Munich, and for the rest of this season where we're chasing a treble. However, of course, there is the other side of things where we just couldn't get the deals done. It's a very weird position to be in. Nonetheless, it has sparked much debate online. And of course, we were all waiting to hear what Brendan Rodgers had to say about it in his press conference this afternoon. So normally I would just summarise what the manager says and tell you through quotes what Brendan Rodgers basically said at the press conference. But instead today I'm going to play this full clip from the press conference, which basically highlights all of his thoughts surrounding the January transfer window and the failure to sign a Kyogo replacement. I think you can tell where he stands in it all. I think you'll see in a moment when I play it, I think he's disappointed, quite clearly. But I think he accepts that this squad is still in a position where it's good enough. So yeah, listen to what Brendan Rodgers has to say. You can make your own assessment of it, but we'll be back in a moment to talk about it.
We've done some obviously really good business in the window. Probably one or two things didn't quite drop for us that we would have liked. But however it ends, you know the squad you have, and fundamentally, we're here to develop the players now for the rest of the season that are here. So listen, there's no doubt that the squad is lighter. I said clearly we wanted to do. We wanted to have that support at the top end of the field. We didn't manage to do that. it's a fair enough thing to say. You know, you can very easily say, well, you should really have someone in the door before you let them go. But there was a situation with that player which meant that wasn't the case. Yeah, 100%. Listen, I said it myself. We want another striker, so we're not hiding behind anything. And absolutely, the supporters will look and see a top striker going out, legendary striker, and we haven't replaced it. So I understand that. Could we have done better? Yeah, we could. However, as I said, we work with the players that are here now, and I think that is the focus. I don't really want to be looking back. And like I said, I'm not going to become frustrated now and kill my joy of working here every day at the club by thinking of what could have been. We can't affect that now. Well, listen, I don't want to pin blame on anyone here. I think as a collective, it wasn't ideal how it ended for us. So yeah, we have to as a club now go away and look at that. I go out that door and I've still got the same group of players, which I'm really happy with. Players that tomorrow night we win our game in hand, we go 13 points clear, we 13 games to go. So we've won a trophy, we're in a playoff stage of the Champions League. We've had a fantastic season until this point. So I don't want to put any clouds over that there and take a narrative which is negative. You know, there still can be a really, really positive season for this until this point. It's been outstanding. So I want to continue with it.
So Brendan Rodgers clearly telling us once more that he did want a striker in this transfer window. He did want a Kyogo replacement, but doesn't put the blame on any particular individual, and says why it wasn't possible, and he explains how we ended up ending the window with no other striker, but at the same time not shying away from his disappointment. And I think that maybe echoes a lot of how I was feeling on last night's stream. I think that there is a huge disappointment that hangs over me that we didn't bring in a striker. I don't think it's the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. I think we're still in a very good place, and if Adam Ida can continue the form that he's found these last few games, we should be fine. But nonetheless, it is poor forward planning. It is not a great position to be in, especially when you're so dominant in this country and you're continuing to build something special. To let down your manager in that way isn't a great sign. It isn't a great look, I would say. Now, I don't know who's been mostly responsible for this. If it's the scouting department for not preparing a sufficient list of strikers, if it's the boardroom for not willing to spend or go for options, we'll never truly know who is directly responsible for this. As Brendan Rodgers said, he doesn't want to name anyone in particular, but it isn't a good look. And I feel bad for Brendan Rodgers that we have to have this sort of, I don't know, disappointing end and leaving us a bitter taste in the mouth, because I think over the past month or so things have started. There was a little dip, if you remember, especially after Rangers beat us, where I think people were a bit down and there was maybe confidence took a bit of a knock, but we got it back. The game against Young Boys, getting through to the next round of the Champions League, signing Jota, getting Kieran Tierney, things were really high, and then to have it come down a little bit again, that's annoying. And Brendan Rodgers was brought back on the sole premise that he would be, well, not the sole premise, but one of the major things that he was promised was that he would be given the squad, given the utilities to take Celtic to the next step. And in this transfer window, I think you can make the argument that that hasn't happened. In fact, I don't think you can make the argument. I think that is the argument, that he hasn't been given those tools to take us to the next step. Now, the Bayern game for many is probably a foregone conclusion, but to be so ill-equipped heading into it isn't ideal. And yeah, I can understand why fans are frustrated. And I can understand why Brendan Rodgers would be frustrated. So they've got a big summer ahead of them where they need to make up a lot of problems in this January window. The fact that we didn't bring in a striker, the fact we waited so long to solve issues. So the summer's huge. Is the squad good enough? Yes, I think we'll be fine. I do it. Listen, Bayern was always going to be a hard game. Take that aside for a minute. I think we'll be fine between now and the end of the season on the domestic front. But obviously you're an Adam Ida injury away from opening up a whole box of problems. So that's the things you've got to be wary of. here is how the squad depth looks heading into the second half of this season. As you can see, the striking department is the one that stands out. Everywhere else, I think we're more than fine, to be honest. There is areas that I still think Celtic could improve, but they weren't exactly a necessity for this transfer window. But the striker department is the letdown. Kenny and Cummings being the backups to Adam Ida is far from ideal, especially when we don't know Kenny's ability at this level. Cummings, his mind is in the East End of London with West Ham. So yeah, it's not a great situation to be in. I think this squad is more than fine to go for this treble and win this treble. And I'm trying to let that carry my positivity. But yeah, you want everybody to be on the same page. You want everybody to feel unanimously happy and optimistic. And without signing a striker, I think that the Celtic board have failed the fans in that part. And that's where it's most frustrating. I'm personally not calling for anybody's head. I think that we need a further assessment of where the summer goes. But it's not a good look. I can't help but express that I am disappointed. So it might be hard for some fans, but the January transfer window needs to be put behind us. We need to look forward now to the rest of the season, both on a European and domestic front. We have a job to do. Celtic will be under the microscope though, and trust me, fans will voice their displeasure if things take even the slightest of dips. And the board will be the first to feel the wrath of that if things don't go well. I would assume, anyway, before we do finish up, Brendan Rodgers did comment on Kieran Tierney at his press conference today, for those who are wondering the situation. Of course, we know he's coming in the summer. Brendan Rodgers confirmed that almost 2 weeks ago now. But he did say at his press conference today that it wasn't going to happen in January, and it was nowhere near close, despite what some reports may have said. This is what Rodgers said. He said it wasn't close and it had nothing to do with Celtic. It was in Arsenal's terms. It wasn't close, and it was clear for Kieran that it was going to be in the summer. If there was a possibility of him joining in January, then it was on Arsenal's terms. Nothing to do for Celtic. If it were to happen, then great. But clearly he's part of their squad, and he will be here in the summer. So for those who are still, a couple of people today are seen still presuming that Tierney isn't a guarantee. He is a guarantee. He's joining in the summer. Celtic are just holding off on an official announcement via the club's social channels. And I've said before, I think that's so they can have him through the door to create some special content. It'll be June, July 1st, maybe, that Tierney is announced as the Celtic player once more. Sadly, just couldn't get it done in January, thanks to Mikel Arteta. And to finish off today's video, of course, Celtic are back in action tomorrow night as we play our game in hand in the Scottish Premiership. A chance for Celtic to move 13 points clear of Rangers once more. A big game, nonetheless. I mean, it's one of those games where you expect Celtic to win and you go into it knowing what the task is, but it's a huge game because you want to keep that hefty lead at the top of the table, and especially if the fans have had a little bit of confidence shaken by the January window, you want to bring it right back straight away. So it's a big game. There was a couple of things that were brought up going into this game. Kasper Schmeichel wasn't spotted training at Lennox Town today. People were speculating that could be an injury or whatnot. Gordon Duncan of Sky Sports seemed to suggest that it's potentially just a break for him, or a day off, essentially, an extra period of rest. So we should maybe still expect to see Kasper Schmeichel tomorrow night, and hopefully Jota's homecoming on a wet and dreich and dreary night. What a homecoming. He must love Glasgow. He must seriously love it. But a big game for Celtic, one that we must win. Right then, that does it for today's video. If you've enjoyed, make sure to hit like and subscribe. As I said, bear with me to the end of the season. I know the exciting period of the window is done, but we've still got a lot of football to talk about, haven't we? Let's get to 50,000 subscribers. Thank you. I appreciate every single one of you. And I'll see you all next time.